Good afternoon. I'll be presenting on behalf of Medicine 5. In my lungs, my consultant is Dr. Karthik. We are presenting a 26-year-old gentleman from Vellore who had presented on the 25th of January with a history of deliberate self-harm with the consumption of paraquat, 10 ml of fluid concentration unknown, which was 2 weeks ago on the 11th of January, following an altercation with his father. After this, the patient was admitted to the ICU in a local hospital at 2 p.m. Induced emesis was done. Following this, he developed progressive renal dysfunction and developed breathlessness on exertion. He was started on TAP prednisolone 10 mg twice a day and referred. When he came to us, he came with a blood pressure of 110 by 70 millimeters of mercury. He was saturating 93% in room air. His tongue was ulcerated and his throat was ulcerated and congested as shown. Respiratory examination revealed the presence of right-sided infraaxillary and infrascapular crepitations. The rest of the systemic examination was normal. The clinical diagnosis here was a case of deliberate self-harm with moderate dose paraquat poisoning with organ involvement in the form of mucosal, pulmonary, and renal involvement. His investigations showed a neutrophilic leukocytosis. His creatinine was 1.2. Chest X-ray showed the presence of right-sided fibrosis. A HRCT chest done showed bilateral airspace consolidation with air bronchograms, ground glass opacities, scarring, atelectasis, pleural thickening bilaterally, and features of right-sided lung volume loss with significant mediastinal and hilar lymph nodes. The learning objectives of my presentation today are to provide an introduction to paraquat poisoning, an understanding of the toxicity and long-term effects, and a comparative analysis of various available treatment options. Paraquat is a non-selective contact herbicide discovered in 1955. It has a potentially fatal clinical presentation. There is paucity of evidence for effective treatment. It is necessary that there is an awareness among healthcare professionals about the serious consequences. The main cause of death among humans is pulmonary fibrosis. A useful bedside test is the urine dithionite test, wherein a 10 ml of urine from a patient who has consumed the poison, when mixed with sodium hydroxide in an alkaline medium, sodium dithionite is able to reduce paraquat to a blue color radical, and a development of blue or green color in the solution is indicative of the presence of significant paraquat consumption. The benefits of this test are that it is very sensitive and it is rapid and easy to perform in a low-cost setting. This is important because the clinical manifestations vary according to the dose of paraquat ingested. In a low-dose poisoning, when a patient has ingested less than 20 milligrams of paraquat per kg body weight, they may be asymptomatic or have GI symptoms and the mortality is low. In a case of moderate paraquat poisoning, when there is 20 to 40 milligrams of paraquat ion per kg body weight consumed, they may have mucosal, renal, and pulmonary involvement, which is the case in our patient who has presented. They can have about 50% mortality between 2 to 4 weeks. In a high dose poisoning, which is greater than 40 milligrams per kg, they may have fulminant MODS, pulmonary, cardiac, renal involvement, CNS involvement, esophageal perforation leading to pneumomediastinum with very high mortality rates grow close to 95% within 1 to 2 days. When we come to some therapies available, first we look at hemoperfusion. Now, paraquat, the main mechanism of toxicity is that it acts via free radical mediated damage, and it causes lipid peroxidation and mitochondrial damage. Hemoperfusion is able to decrease the levels of inflammatory cytokines and oxygen-free radicals. It is much more effective than hemodialysis. However, it should be started as early as possible and continued every 4 hours until the paraquat levels in urine are negative. However, paraquat is able to enter into the lung tissue, into the alveoli by energy-mediated transport, and levels in the alveoli are 10 to 20 times higher than the levels in the blood. Therefore, this reduction in the levels of paraquat in the blood might not translate to a reduction in the levels in the alveoli. Also, this therapy might not be easily available in rural centers where paraquat poisoning is quite common. Second are combination glucocorticoid and cyclophosphamide. These act by stabilizing cell membranes, they fight against lipid peroxidation, and they improve respiratory function. It is useful to reduce mortality in severe poisoning. It is suggested to administer these after hemoperfusion. Again, we have limited evidence regarding appropriate dose and duration. Third are various antioxidant therapies like vitamin C, E, glutathione, and NAC. They prevent the progress of pulmonary fibrosis, but again, there are few survival benefits related to these. This is a study that was published in the Journal of Critical Care Medicine in 2006. This has looked at the benefit of repeated dose methylprednisolone and cyclophosphamide with continuous dexamethasone for patients with severe paraquat poisoning. This was an RCT done in Taiwan on 23 patients who had consumed paraquat, who had a 50 to 90% predicted mortality based on the serum paraquat levels. They were randomly assigned to the control and study groups in a 1:2 proportion. On the right, we can see what this repeated dose pulse therapy was. All patients had initially received activated charcoal contained hemoperfusion within 24 hours. An initial pulse therapy was with injection dexamethasone 5 mg IV Q6H with monitoring of the PaO2 levels. If the PaO2 levels continued to be below 60, they had a repeat pulse therapy with methylprednisolone for 3 days, followed by a cyclophosphamide pulse therapy after 2 weeks. This was again followed by injection dexamethasone 5 mg Q6H till the PaO2 was greater than 80 millimeters of mercury or till the patient succumbed. In the study group, we can see that the mortality was 31%, which was significantly lower than the control group, which had conventional therapy only with dexamethasone, wherein the mortality was 85%. When we look at some broad categories available for treatment in paraquat poisoning, and on the right side are summarized the references for the same. One broad category is the prevention of GI absorption by gastric lavage and activated charcoal, a single dose, or Fuller's Earth. However, data is conflicting here, and therapy must be chosen in a case-to-case basis. Second broad category is the removal of paraquat from blood. They involve hemoperfusion, hemodialysis, and continuous veno-venous hemofiltration. Again, as we have seen earlier, it might reduce the paraquat levels in the blood, but it might not really reduce the levels of paraquat which have already entered into alveoli. However, CVVH and such therapies can prolong survival time for patients who are yet to receive additional therapy. Third are alternative therapies like immunosuppression and antioxidants. In patients who have a severe poisoning, immunosuppression with glucocorticoids and cyclophosphamide can lower death rates. Acetylcysteine is renal protective. It has low adverse reaction profile. Long-term antioxidants can be a critical component to improve survival. There is a school of thought which says that the PaO2 levels in such patients should be maintained between 60 to 65, and aggressive oxygen therapy should not be given because it can add to the free radical mediated damage. This is a very useful flowchart for the management of paraquat poisoning published by the Department of Medicine Unit 5 in the Current Medical Issues Journal in 2019. If a patient comes with an alleged consumption of paraquat poison, and if there is a significant paraquat ingestion, which is greater than 30 ml of a 20 to 24% compound, or a positive urine spot test, we must look for local toxicities in the form of mucosal damage and look for systemic involvement in the form of respiratory distress, persistent hypotension, renal failure, and abdominal pain, because there can be liver toxicity or toxin-mediated pancreatitis also in such patients. If present, we must ensure adequate measures for airway, breathing, and circulation management are in place. GI decontamination with activated charcoal or Fuller's Earth, wash thoroughly mucosal surfaces, and the three broad categories of treatment like hemoperfusion, hemodialysis, anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive therapy, and antioxidant therapy is to be employed. If not, we must employ repeated urine spot diethionate test as we have done earlier. If positive, look again for local and systemic toxicities. If negative, again the repeat urine diethionate test is to be repeated after 6 hours. If negative, the patient can be discharged. Our patient was discharged home on 10 mg oral twice daily steroids, planned for a gradual taper on OPD basis, and planned for close follow-up. My learning points are today, a paraquat, though a potentially fatal herbicide if consumed by humans, since the outcomes are dire, there is a school of thought that tested treatment options should be utilized aggressively in such patients. The cause of death in humans is pulmonary fibrosis. The three main categories of treatment involve: one, the prevention of GI absorption, example gastric lavage; removal of paraquat from the blood, example by hemoperfusion, and alternative therapies like immunosuppressant therapy and antioxidants. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for that case. Is Karthik there? Does he want? Do you want to make any comments?
Thank you, Susan, for that excellent presentation. Basically, what we want to emphasize is paraquat, usually the mortality is very high, and we need to explore this option of immunosuppressants and antioxidants in patients who present early, so that there is mortality benefit. And other thing we want to stress on is how do you manage the long-term sequelae? There is no clear evidence to how long we need to give steroids or to follow them up. So this patient was treated elsewhere, and he had actually survived. He's come with the complication of pulmonary fibrosis, for which he was started on steroids. We are hoping that the symptoms improve over the period of time. That's all. Nothing else to add on.
Okay. Susan, I just have this question. Why do you think your patient did better? It's so was it because he had taken a lesser dose, or was it because it was aggressively treated with steroids?
Yes, ma'am. I think a combination of both, ma'am. Though he had consumed 10 ml, the exact concentration of the compound was not known. Second is that he had immediately presented within 6 hours. He presented, and then aggressive treatment of steroids was also given, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Karthik.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next case from Medicine 3. Not